everyone. Russian President Vladimir Putin has drawn a new red line over Ukraine's use of long-range missiles into Russian territories. But the burning question is, will the West cross this new line? And what will be Moscow's reaction to this? Mr. Putin, who took a shot at NATO allies, warned that the West would be directly fighting Russia if it allowed Ukraine to strike his country. He made this known while speaking to reporters in St. Petersburg. In his words, it's not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons. It's making a decision about whether or not NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States and European countries, in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this, of course, significantly changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been pleading with Kyiv's allies for months to let Ukraine fire Western missiles deep into Russian territory to limit Moscow's ability to launch attacks. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Russia can end the war it started in Ukraine right now, following President Putin's latest warning. Mr. Starmer made the comments in Washington alongside Foreign Secretary David Lammy for talks with U.S. President Joe Biden as allies of Kyiv discussed giving Ukraine permission to fire their missiles at targets inside Russia. Britain and France have already sent Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine, but with the caveat that Kyiv can only fire them at targets inside its own borders. According to the New York Times, citing European officials, the United States looks set to approve the use by Ukraine of long-range missiles against targets in Russia on the condition that the weapons were not those provided by the United States.
The press line tracking where the barrel is, yeah.
And where is it?
Wilson has kept it on.
Right. I did know that. I don't know why.
Actually went.
Well, public affairs analyst Oluseyi Adeyemo joins us now for more. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Joke. I'm happy to be here.
Right, so it's not the first time Russia is making such threats to NATO allies. Russia has drawn lines before and also seen them crossed. Are you surprised by this new warning by Mr. Putin?
I mean, it's a show of the fact that Putin sees that in some way Ukraine is sort of moving in more and, sort of delving more on the country. And obviously, it would make such threats, because the truth of the matter is, on the world goal, this war has always been between Russia and NATO. It's about gaining back the line of the line they had before. Because the truth is, if they have Ukraine, they will move on to the rest of Europe and NATO members. So it's about going back to having the walls of the Soviet Union. And so I believe that both sides are doing well as regards political declarations and all of that. But at the end of the day, we all know where this is coming from and where it's going.
And on a broader scale now, what would be the bigger implications if the West actually crosses this line and allows Ukraine strike Russian territory with Western weapons?
The truth of the matter is, Putin is also playing on the fact that there's an election around the corner, and every leader is careful not to be seen as the one who led the escalation of the world. And so he knows that everyone is also treading carefully. And for that reason, US got its elections a few months away from now. And so they are very careful to make a declaration, go all the way. But everybody's, in my opinion, treading cautiously. And so the red lines have been there. Like you rightly said in your report, several of the red lines have been crossed. He's also been careful the way he goes about this, because he's leaning on his ally. He's not like he can, as Russia, the way he is right now, face NATO is depending on the fact that if anything happens, they will be able to employ or deploy the likes of Iran, North Korea, China, and the rest of them. But truth of the matter is, in my own opinion, I believe that everyone knows their boundary and everyone is careful to hold on to their boundary. I agree with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom that he started this and he alone can stop this. And our prayer is that he will stop it.
And even though Mr. Putin says that Russia will make appropriate decisions, he didn't exactly make it clear how Moscow would respond. What do you envisage could be the possible retaliation?
Again, there's nothing definite. You would, like I said earlier, try to employ the services or of his allies, people like North Korea, China, the rest of them. There's nothing really you can do because truth is, everyone is becoming stronger, which was my fear initially when all of this, everyone was acquiring the nuclear power and all of that. It was going to get to this where you dare not detonate yours because if the other person detonates his, everywhere we go up in flame, So that's where we are right now. Everyone has acquired, the equipment, the nuclear weapon, and so at this junction, everybody must tread with caution. That's the junction we're at right now. So he can't really do anything. He can only threaten and say, we also have allies. We have ways where we can, sort of inflict pain on you people if you do more than you're doing right now. But it is obvious that from day one, it's about them. The reason why he went into Ukraine in the first place was because he said that he feared that the place would be used as a launching pad for NATO. So it's all about facing NATO from the word go.
Do you think, or do you see the possibility of Kyiv launching Western missiles into Russian territories as a situation where the Russian president is being backed, into a war further than he probably imagined himself?
Clearly, when this started over 2 years ago, I believe clearly that Putin never thought that this was going to last this long, and he never knew that Ukraine would be able to stand their ground after they've been able to stand their ground. So at the junction we're in right now, beyond this long-range missiles, we also know that they're also deploying all sorts of chemical weapons that is being used from here and there, so at the end of the day, drones are being used and all of that. So there's several ways where pain can be inflicted on Russia from different angles. And you've seen all of this. They're on ground for the first time. Ukraine are on ground. They've entered. We've seen several videos of them chasing Russian soldiers and all of that. So it's at a point where right now, like I said earlier, everyone's treading, cautiously. Nobody really wants to do anything. You can only back, if I may use that word. Everyone's just, employing diplomacy and saying, okay, if you do this, I'll do that. If you do that, I'll do that. It gets to that point when you meet your pair or your counterpart, when you see that the person on the other side has got strength as well. So that is where we are right now. Everyone is strong. Everyone has got power. They've got ally. They've got ways where they can inflict pain. And so you want to be careful because you don't want a situation where whilst you're trying to inflict pain on your opponent inflicts pain on you. You can see what is happening in Israel right now, where though they're sort of winning, everyone all over the world, is accusing them of whatever, and that is something one has to be very careful about because there'll be several parties to this at the end of the day, and there'll be several reactions. So all the leaders are being careful what they do, what they say, and what steps they take.
Right, public affairs analyst Felicia Yademo, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
UK Foreign Office has called Russian allegations of spying against British diplomats completely baseless. It indicated that the move was a tit-for-tat action after the UK expelled the Russian defense attaché and removed diplomatic status from several Russian properties in May. The comments come after Russia expelled 6 British diplomats, revoking their accreditation. According to local news sources, Moscow Security Service had received documents indicating Britain's involvement in ensuring a strategic defeat on Russia in its war against Ukraine. Reacting to this news, Director of Russia and Eurasia Program at Chatham House, James Nixie, says bilateral ties between Russia and the UK could barely be worse at this time.
Obviously, relations between the UK and Russia could barely be worse. This is, I guess, one step towards the total cutting off of all diplomatic relations and ambassadors being sent home and embassies closed and potentially even repurposed. But we're not quite there yet. But it does seem to me as though the UK does and always has done drawn a specific particular level of ire from the Russians. It has privately admitted that, yes, it would like to see those restrictions lifted, but it is unwilling to go against, contradict, or counterpoint the Americans. This is a traditional British position under successive governments. So I don't know exactly what Starmer and Biden will agree on, but again, Biden is on a very short-term contract now, and Starmer is on a much longer-term contract, and therefore this problem is going to be his problem in a way that it won't be Joe Biden's problem in the months to come. This is a carefully planned statement by the Russian president, designed to have that chilling effect and to dissuade actions which would be detrimental to the Russian prosecution of its war. So, and that has effects. We know that it has effects. I mean, there are some people who would prefer us not to push for a Ukrainian victory because it would, I don't know, it would escalate. It would bring down the Russian president. It would create anarchy. It would set off loose nukes. That is the disaster scenario that sensible and serious people do think about in the US administration, for example. The West does also know it's being played by Putin. It's not stupid. And so when Putin talks about a Russian NATO war, then it's taken seriously, but it is also well understood that this is a play and not so much a bluff, because as I say, because I've already mentioned that Russia already considers itself to be at war with NATO, but it is certainly something that is designed to hold the West back in its support for Ukraine, in its pursuit of its defeat of Russia.
In another development, International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan has met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. The discussion between the two parties focused on the ICC's arrest warrants for Russian officials and how it can be implemented. The ICC issued the warrants for Russian officials, including President Vladimir Putin and ex-defense minister Sergei Shoigu, for their roles in alleged war crimes against Ukrainian civilians. Russia denies targeting civilians.
As I said previously, for us it's very important. So we are fighting for democracy, for freedom, for our values, and we defending it, and we want to be closer to all our allies. And for us, it was very important, and I'm happy that our parliament decided also to participate in this decision.
Americans, Churchill, Stalin, they were discussing Nuremberg, something like Nuremberg, when there's peace. While people are dying, you've insisted that the law must be relevant to people right now. The law must be felt to protect Ukrainians, but also it should be used against those that are committing crimes. And I think this is something of historic significance. It's extremely important.